Good morning. So this is a little bit of a recap and a GM reflections on our Symbaroum session 8 last night. This is our GM rotation campaign. So there are three of us that have shared the GM seat through a total of about 12 sessions. We've had a couple of sessions that were two-parters. I think Dell's had two two-parters. I think David's had a two-parter. I've run three sessions. So we're on session 8. But really, we've had multiple sessions. I think I would say 12 to 13 total sessions in all already, which has been amazing. Maybe not that many, hard to say. We've had some other people join us. John as Big Lug joined on the first Eye of Adolphus session and the second session. I'd hoped that he would make it last night. He wasn't able to. Of course, Todd joined us a while back on my royal bloodletting, my session about their being bodyguards to the royal, to a royal family. That was, I think, Todd's first session, I think, with us. Maybe not. Todd might have joined us in Dell's session. I can't remember now. So this has been a remarkable experience. This has been one of the best experiences I've had in the hobby. Period. Number one, Symbaroum's great. I've talked about this before. I have an affinity for the lore. I have affinity for the original system, and I have an affinity, of course, for this genre, this kind of dark fantasy genre. It's great. But it's the first time I've ever actually shared the GM seat in a campaign. What's been fascinating about this is we aren't sharing behind the scenes secrets. So it isn't like I, as a GM, am passing along notes of, hey, by the way, for continuity's purposes, Rigel is this guy, and this is what Rigel is about, and this is what's going on with Rigel. And we have not got any linking threads. We have the lore of Symbaroum of the books, which you can't see with my background out. I don't know why. I guess light is why that won't show up. But anyway, the Symbaroum books. We have the lore of all the Symbaroum books that we want to use. We have, of course, the results of our sessions to draw on. I created NPC Rigel for the first session. Rigel, again, in my head, I knew what Rigel was about. Dell just removed him in session 7, said he's vanished from the world. That cued me that there has to be fallout, because I know what Rigel is and I know what Rigel's about. So that cued me that there would be major fallout from this that would affect the players, as they were working illegally for a criminal, and therefore they were affected by it for this session last night. I set up the situation for last night's session, right? And it was great. So I had created a couple of threads off of this session. One, a major thread with an opportunity to pursue evidence against the people who destroyed their reputation and went after Blackmore and Rigel, right? So in a way, that was kind of the major thread. That's like the major branch of last night's session. Again, we didn't have, Todd couldn't make it, John wasn't there, so it was just Dell, Todd, and I. And Dell introduced a whole new character because his character is removed, dead, or transformed. So Dell, for the first time, made a character. I made Shig for him, and he was playing Shig. He was a good sport. He continued to play Shig. But it was not Dell's character. I mean, Dell didn't define this character from beginning to end. Dell did a brilliant job making Shig who he was, but I mean, it was a pre-made character I made for him because he didn't have time. So Dell had a chance to work out his own character and introduced a whole new character last night. Taro, my character, of course, is out because I'm GMing. So I talked about where Taro's at and what condition Taro's in from the backlash and the fallout of they're being publicly humiliated and losing their right to treasure hunt in the Davokar. David's character Malleus has been here from day one, and Malleus, of course, is also suffering this disgrace. His characters had to do odd jobs in Thistlehold. The Chamberlain being the only NPC higher up on the chain, the Queen's Chamberlain, the queen of the entire country. Chamberlain is an ally who has, in a way, he is their only he's their only lifesaver to utter and complete exile, or being homeless, so to speak. So they've got that still. They're clinging to a thread of the Chamberlain being able to rescue them from fines, from debtor's prison, from potential indentured servitude, etc. Okay. With that being said, again, I had about 3 kind of places to go in this session. However, I always leave it wide open. David could have said, listen, I want to, if I have to, I'm going to go to the underworld and I'm going to get a job doing what I do. And I don't care what that means. David could have said that I'm tired of picking up horse manure. I'm tired of working odd jobs around Thistlehold. This ain't going to work for me. And I'm going to pursue this thing. Dell's character introduced to the session, he could have said, listen, this is what I'm here to do. This is what I'm trying to do. And we would have done, we would have definitely done sandbox open world style. We have the lore of Symbaroum. We have our characters. We're all veterans. We all are veteran players, veteran GMs. So no sweat in doing it that way. And so they're not limited to choices, right? But I do present things that are happening that affect their character, etc. So I had a major branch where they get a missive. Malleus opens up a anonymous note from somebody that says, listen, there's evidence against your enemies at this location in the world. And the courier that delivered the missive to him also said, listen, I know you're down and out. I know you're a man of capable means. Would you be willing to investigate rumors of my former master, a knight called Hinro, who vanished 8 years ago? And I now have a tell that he's at a Queen's Rangers camp in the Davokar, just a couple of days north of here. Would you go investigate that for me? And that's the job Malleus took. Malleus bartered for 20 thaler to do this gig. All Holtz wanted from Malleus was identify if it's him. He tells Malleus the identifying characteristics. Please go off and venture into the Davokar, verify that this is the man, and verify he's alive, etc. That's all I ask. So they barter. He pays him 10 thalers now, and he says, I'll pay you 10 when you return. Malleus then looks around and says, well, there's no big lug, there's no tarot, there's no Cabela to help me. So I'm going to have to go out. I'm going to have to go talk to Thoria, who I've just met. Malleus met Thoria through Malleus's attempt to remove corruption, right? So he's at some point turned to Thoria as an aid in helping him remove corruption, as David's character Malleus has suffered some corruption on the last few adventures. And that's he explains that's how he kind of is intrigued by Thoria and gets to know Thoria. Dell's character is a changeling monk wizard staff mage. So his staff absorbs corruption when he uses his rituals and magic. He has an underling that he changeling stole an infant from a cradle 17 years ago and has raised this infant as his underling apprentice, Bonner, an NPC, and that's who I had to play at times for him, the 17-year-old underling. So he really had 3 characters, an NPC, Bonner, that's Dell's underling, and then of course Dell's character, a changeling monk, and then Malleus, our veteran warrior who's fallen on hard times and isn't happy about it, right? And nor should he be happy about it, right? I mean, he went from the man who rescued the Chamberlain's grandkids with Cabello and Shig to an enemy of the state, accused of treason and having his rights revoked to adventure into the Davokar. So the problem that they face, the conflict that's created by these events, is that he can go into the Davokar to do this, but he's going to be traveling illegally. That in and of itself is a conflict for David and for Malleus. Thoria is not affected by this. He wasn't part of the Rigel corporation in which they were operating illegally. So Thoria, his only concern about the Davokar is he's hoping to beat back corruption. So his character's invested in the removal of corruption or the slowing of corruption of the Davokar. So his character certainly would not mind traipsing into the Davokar to deal with corruption and evil. However, this was not necessarily what he had in mind, right? As going with Malleus, into the Davokar to identify a particular person. But Malleus convinces him to go, kind of under the guise that, sure, I'll be an apprentice. Thora says, yes, if you'll join me and learn my ways, Padawan, kind of the Jedi Padawan. And Malleus begrudgingly kind of goes, yeah, okay, sure, right? And so they're off. And they travel only about an hour into the Bright Davokar, just inside the border of the Bright Davokar to the Queen's Rangers staging area. And this just happens to be a simple camp with about 4 tents in it, a mess tent, a barracks, an infirmary, and then of course a Queens Rangers records tent where they take where people can purchase, pay fines, pay taxes, purchase adventure papers, that kind of thing. And so it's just a staging area. It's not the place Hulse had told Malleus the rumors of his former master were. That's supposed to be the farthest north 2-day hike, day and a half hike into the Davokar at a forward camp of the Queen's Rangers, more dangerous, more hostile, and certainly well into the Davokar, which Malleus is not looking forward to being illegally into the Davokar. Okay. Well, they get in an hour outside hike outside of Thistlehold. They come to the staging area and they investigate the staging area. And here they decide that they'll look here first. And luckily for them, they do, because this is exactly where their prey is. And their prey is just identifying this person. But in hiding in the bushes, not wanting to get caught in this camp, there's a platoon of Queen's Rangers that are swapping roles. One is coming in from its night shift, and they're doffing their armor and they're going to bed. The other are getting ready for their patrols for the day. There are some people in the hospitality tent eating breakfast. There's some people in the infirmary, and then there's the line of explorers that are there to pay taxes or purchase rights or whatever at the records tent. And so they watch all this from the bushes. Thoria shape changes as a changeling. With shape changing, he shape changes into a bird. He flies around the camp to spy everything, and he identifies in the infirmary is someone who meets the description of the person they're looking for. Malleus is a bit, and he flies back, tells Malleus this, and Malleus is a little surprised by this. Well, wait a minute, he's here. He's supposed to be at the forward camp, 2 days hike in. But Malleus decides, well, I better investigate. And so they work their way around the camp. Malleus waits patiently among the bushes and trees until one half of the platoon go to bed. The other half of the platoon head out on their stuff. And now all the explorers that were there to pay fines or to purchase rights that added onto their so you have to have an explorer's license in Symbaroum to go into the Davokar and hunt treasure. But you have to pay for not only the number of people in your party, but you have to pay for the rights to collect firewood, the rights to collect herbs, the rights to bring out relics. So you have to pay a fee for all these different rights. And the size of your group, you can either get an individual license for these things and just add on what you're allowed to do, or you can buy a group one that accounts for the 5 members of your party and what you're allowed to do. And if you're stopped at the Queen's Rangers at these gates, the Queen's Rangers will inspect your stuff and they'll fine you or they'll charge you, etc. So this is the thing David's character, Malleus, is no longer allowed to do. He's no longer allowed to purchase one of these licenses and actually do this legally. Okay. Which he wasn't doing originally, but didn't know it. He didn't know he had a forged illegal document. So they were working illegally on Rigel's, bribes and ribals. Right. Okay. But they didn't scrutinize their papers with Rigel so they could kind of know what they were doing. They suspected they were fuzzy papers, but they never really did anything about it. And it came back to bite him on the arse when Rigel vanished. Okay. So anyway, he moves around the camp once it kind of thins out a little bit. He spies the infirmary. He sees there's 2 attendants tending 2 wounded Queen's Rangers, very wounded, to the point that they're not talking. They're tending 2 mortally wounded Queen's Rangers. And there's one individual that's kind of set outside the infirmary, very sick. He's vomiting. He's clearly moaning and groaning. This is a very sick man. And he's set aside from everybody else. So clearly, maybe they think they're quarantining. Clearly, they think maybe he's infectious or contagious. And then there's the person of interest. And the person of interest has how they can identify him is this giant cleaved scar that he earned as a young knight in a battle or something. Anyway, and it starts at the crown of his skull, goes all the way down through his eye, through his beard, etc. Malleus walks over while the attendants are working. And Malleus investigates, finds out he's very, very sick, about 90 pounds, emaciated, starving, delirious, feverish victim, so to speak. And he asks him, "Are you Hinro, right? Are you the guy?" And he can't quite respond. He responds in this sing-songy foreign tongue that Malleus doesn't recognize. He repeats the same couple of words, a phrase over and over and over with a smile on his face. And Malleus then is addressed by the attendant, says, "Who are not who are you, but do you know who this man is?" Malleus debates whether he should say anything. The attendant says, if you know, we should tell the record, we should tell the the administrator, the records keeper, and the attendant leaves to go get the record keeper. Meanwhile, Malleus goes back to him and attends him and tries to talk to him. And then the record keeper calls him over and he says, who is this man? He said, well, I've been sent here to, identify him. I recognize him by the scar. That's the knight, Sir Henro. And the attendant, who they don't know, is Sergeant Emilio. They don't, Malleus never gives him his name. Hey, I'm Malleus. I'm telling you, I know who that guy is. Malleus doesn't ask who he is, but it's Sergeant Emilio. Sergeant Emilio takes all this information and thanks him for identifying him. Malleus then chastises him. Why aren't you taking care of him? I mean, I've been here now for a while, and you're attending everybody but him. And he warns that, well, we're not attending him because he's got a fever and he's sick, and we're worried he might be infectious like the other gentleman. So we're kind of waiting to see what turn it takes. Number one. Number two, we didn't know who he was. He was rescued from a Darkling camp the settlement that we destroyed. We killed all the Darklings and the prince. This was a lone slave of the prince, and we've rescued him and brought him back. And so now that further confirms to Malleus this is the knight Henro, because it's the same story that Holst basically gave him. Okay, so Malleus now knows for sure it's the knight. He tells them you should attend him. And then Malleus says, my job's done. And he walks away from the knight. And he basically says to the attendant and to the records keeper, Sergeant Emilio, he's going to die anyway. I mean, he ain't long for this world. So he just abandons it. So they go back. And he decides he might still be able to catch Holtz. It's only been half a day, right? He didn't have to go overnight. He didn't have to hike in. And it dawns on him that he might well be able to still find Holtz somewhere around Thistlehold, as he is a courier. He is an independent contractor. He is the most renowned and respected courier in the kingdom. And so he gets paid top dollar to deliver government missives and to deliver noble missives and to deliver packages, etc. He has a couple of bodyguards. And so David goes down to the Queen's Legation, the road in which the Queen's Legation's on. He finds a page, and he tells the page, see if you can find Holtz. And he sends this page out into the crowds of Thistlehold hunting for Holtz. Dell's character returns back to his hilltop to meditate. And David sends the boy Bonner to fetch lunch. And so then while the boy's getting lunch, Malleus goes down to the Queen's Legation to find Holtz, and Thoria returns to his hillside campsite to meditate. Sure enough, the page comes back and says, yeah, Holtz is only right down the street a couple of blocks, and he's in a tavern waiting for a package that he has to deliver. And so he quick steps it down to the tavern, goes in, tells Holtz, hey, a couple things. One, I think I found your man. Two, he wasn't where you said he would be. Holtz explains that, the information he got might have been wrong, that maybe they moved him down to this camp in the last couple of days. Who knows? But are you sure? And he says, absolutely, I'm sure. The story of how they found him and brought him to the camp corroborates with your story that he is, and he has the scar, and we're pretty sure it's him. So Holtz, of course, overjoyed and shocked to find out he's only 45 minutes out of town, hour out of town. He hastily pays Malleus what he owes him plus some, because he just dumps thalers into his hand. He gets paid about 7 more than he should have. And he thanks him and says, you've done a great thing for me, helping me find my former master so I can take care of him, so I can go get him and rescue him or whatever. And so he takes off. Malleus follows him out and sees him in the street talking to his bodyguards, and they take off in a 3/4 time run, which you can imagine as a courier who goes all over the kingdom. Probably he and these bodyguards that's what they do. They run from place to place to place. And I described Holtz as being short, but uber fit. I mean, he's really trim. So these guys probably run everywhere. They're probably uber fit in his bodyguards, his former Queen's Army bodyguards. Okay, they're gone. Holtz goes home and decides to call it a day. Thoria tells his minion Bonner to plant the seeds of the fruit tree, and hands him a bunch of seeds and says, plant these seeds. Bonner, of course, irritated by the chore of planting seeds. And that's where we end the session. It was great. It was a great session. And it was good. In a way, it was good that David didn't try to go hunt the evidence down. That was a 21 to 24 day journey on foot. very dangerous. It's going to take, it would have taken a lot of the session just to get to their location, and then from that location to find the spot on the map. That really is a far more dangerous adventure, and it's probably wise David and Thoria didn't try to do this by themselves, because it's not only dangerous to cross the map out of the Davokar over 21 to 24 days, but then get into the Davokar and then look around the Davokar. So it was wise that David, in the state his character's in, and that he chose something a little closer to home, so to speak. But again, they would have been free. David would have been free to say, "Listen, I'm tired of this. I've got to be able to find some shady work in which I can at least put my skills." Dell talked about the motive of his character wanting to recruit people to become his apprentices, so he can take them into the Davokar to fight corruption. So Dell could have said, I'm going to set up a stall in the I'm going to try to recruit people, and so they have freedom. They have complete freedom in these games. So anyway, the experience has been truly one of the best I've ever had in tabletop hobby, certainly as an adult. Sharing the GM seat with other people who enjoy not only the system but enjoy the setting and just sharing that responsibility takes pressure off as we all rotate. It allows us to enjoy the world and enjoy the game and enjoy characters and relationships, but then it also allows us to exercise the GM role, and it's really amazing. A couple things are really amazing. We've kept very good with the Symbaroum lore from the books. We've had good continuity in what's happened from session to session. We've had great continuity in the NPCs that exist, and we've done it without having to share secrets. Right? Dell doesn't have to say to me, well, what's Rigel's thing? What's Rigel all about? What is this thing about Rigel? No, Dell knows what Rigel is. The same thing the public knows, the same thing David knows, the same thing that Todd knows. They just know what Rigel is in general. They don't have to know my secret. So we're actually not sharing like secrets of the world that so you think, how can GM share this seat in the same campaign? Because everything that's public, we draw on. Everything that's in the books lore-wise, we draw on. And we don't actually have some epic secrets. We don't have this epic goal of saving the world. We don't have this epic goal of defeating the evil king or whatever the case may be. So there isn't some kind of secrets we all have to kind of share and then pretend we don't know as characters, right? And that's what's made this great, is you don't have to do that, right? You don't have to have these secrets behind the scenes that we then meta that we don't know, right? And so it's been great. It's been great to get the fallout from Dell's sessions, the fallout from David's sessions, the fallout from my sessions, and then we pick up these little pieces that are public that we all know, and then we can kind of fold those into the world when it's our turn, and it makes sense. There's continuity, there's context, and more importantly, when Dell just announces that Shig and Rigel have vanished, I already know what Rigel is, and I already know that they've all been working illegally for Rigel. And what would this mean? Knowing the lore of the actual book, page 42, core rulebook, curiosities, the Queen's Legation, it defines this kind of animosity between the burgeoning city of Blackmoor and the actual city of Thistlehold. That's there. It's in the books. What Rigel meant to Blackmoor and Rigel's nefarious deeds became a tool that the authorities of Thistlehold uses to suppress and punish Blackmoor, and therefore punish the characters for their role in these illegal activities. And it's amazing. And there's no conversation about that. He doesn't even know what role Rigel really plays. And it was great because it instantly, in a way, it pulled a stopper out of this thing that I'm now like, oh, there's we've got a hole in the dam, and how's this going to affect the village, so to speak? It's great fun. So it's an interesting challenge, but at the same time, it makes me think outside the box. If I was running every session, well, there would be some continuity that becomes predictable, right? Or continuity for me that I wouldn't have thought, I'm just going to remove Rigel from the game. So it was also a neat event because it made me go, wow, how does this affect the world? This is kind of cool. And more importantly, how does that affect the players? And it created this conflict. It creates this conflict. And therefore there's fallout. Tarot is affected. My character is affected by this news. Malleus is affected by this news. Cabela would be affected by this, them being declared, not allowed to go into the Davokar. It's been an amazing thing. So anyway, that's it. It was the irony is it was a short little jaunt into the woods, and it took 2.5 hours. And there's a couple of things that I think were phenomenal for me with that. Lots of role playing, just lots of role playing. No combat. We had 0 combat. And this is what's amazing. I think in total, the whole session, 2.5 hours of play. I think David rolled the dice 4 times. Dale maybe rolled the dice 8 times. 4 of them were shape-shifting checks Dale had to do to change into a again at the tent. By the way, when Malleus was investigating this person, Dale had turned into a skunk and was kind of distracting the camp by racing around as a skunk and spewing putrid stench. And so that kind of kept people from watching Malleus talk to the attendants. I forgot to mention that. But my point is, Dell had to make a change into a bird to investigate. Then he had to change back. Then he had to change into the skunk. He had to change back. So Dell had to make 4 rolls, just straight up resolute rolls. Then they had some cunning checks. They had a couple of vigilance checks. But 2.5 hours of fantastic investigation and play. And they only had to make in total, I would say, 12 dice rolls all night. And it was wonderful. Again, dice only came up when there was a challenge. Dice only came up when there was an actual conflict. There was a reason we needed to check something. And I really appreciate that style. I don't care if we're playing old school D&D or we're playing Symbaroum or whatever. I really appreciate I appreciate the challenge arising because there is a challenge, not an arbitrary randomness, right? And I get it. A lot of GMs don't want to make the decision. I don't know. Is there a torch here? Let's roll to find out. I get it. They don't want to declare yes, declare no. But very often, a lot of that stuff slows the game down. A lot of that stuff it's like, well, why wouldn't there be a torch here? Like, can't you come up with a reason there is or is not a torch here and just we'll accept it? So some of that stuff sometimes bothers me. But I certainly, as GM, and there were a couple of times I just asked them, what is the goal is, what is your cunning? You could just use their score. So if I said in my head, okay, if their cunning is above 10, they don't have to make a roll to understand, to make some observations about this letter, right? So that kind of thing. But it was great, and I really enjoyed it. We had a great conversation afterward, a little bit about the experience of sharing the GM seat, a little bit about how to fold new characters into a proven group that's motivated or has certain goals. We never had a session 0 where we discussed our characters and discussed our characters' goals, and more importantly, our characters' goals as a group as to what we want to achieve as a party of adventurers. And I'm happy we did that, because I think our personal motivations, a character's personal motivations, become the paramount reason we see the world through their eyes. We're affected by them, but it also becomes in a shared GM seat situation, the group having this kind of goal as a party, could be a bit of a problem when you're sharing the GM seat, right? And so there's kind of a collective goal in the fact that we're all trying to survive in this world of Symbaroum. We're trying to make our way. Taro has his personal motivation. Malleus has his personal motivation. Adele's character, the new changeling, has his personal motivation. That's good enough. And we all have to come together for the greater good. We all have to come together to try to achieve our personal motivations. And to do that, we need help. We need allies. We need friends. We need a party. We need a group that's willing to do whatever we need to do to survive in the world, but at the same time, maybe benefit for our personal goals could be positively affected just by succeeding as a party in the thing. And so it works just like old D&D, right? Just like, we're all going in the dungeon. We want to get the treasure from the monsters, or we want to rid the village of the goblins. And so we're going to get the goblin treasure while also killing all the goblins, whatever the case is. Everybody who comes in and out of those campaigns can plug right into that philosophy. In something like Moldvay D&D or OSE, guys die all the time. It's very easy to narratively in one sentence fold in why there's a new cleric here, because there's a hole in the party, and because this cleric is trying to achieve the same things the old fighter who died last week is trying to do. And so it works. It works completely. Symbaroum, because there's a little more we're well into a campaign that has some threads of continuity now. Dell playing a kind of an outsider changeling character, monk, how are we gonna how's Malleus gonna know him, and how is he gonna fold in to work with Malleus? And they worked it out. Malleus said, listen, I'm confiding in him to deal with corruption, and at the same time, he's basically asked me to, and they didn't discuss this. Before session started, I said, you guys think about, how do you guys kind of know each other? What's the deal? They still hadn't quite figured it out. And in session, Malleus basically said, yeah, this is what's going on. And then, of course, Dell, live in session, basically said, yes, why don't you join my cause? Why don't you become one of my apprentices, and we'll do this together? And Malleus kind of begrudgingly goes, yeah, sure. Okay, if that's what it takes, let's go. So it worked out, and it worked out live, actual play, which was cool. And it can. Now, Dell, of course, has his personal motivations, character has his personal motivations that he's attempting to achieve in success. But at the same time, Dell has to keep in mind as a player, how does he work? How does he play with everybody else? How does this character function as a part of something? And that's the challenge for Dell. How can he be his character, but also in a way fold into Malleus and Taro and Cabello, and right? And I think that's part of the challenge as players. It's part of the challenge that we enjoy. At the same time, changing the GM seat every couple of weeks has been great fun. So it's I really wish John could have been there. I really wish Todd could have made it. Would have been great fun. We'll be fine. They'll fold in when they can next time. So either way, I got to thank the guys. Another great session of Symbaroum. Again, I've talked ad infinitum about my affinity for both the Symbaroum lore setting and the actual original game system. I'm not remotely interested in Symbaroum 5e. D&D Symbaroum is pointless, other than to capitalize on the popularity of D&D 5th edition and make a ton of money, and to expose more people who would never try Symbaroum's world and lore. Those people would be exposed to it through their favorite game system. But again, I appreciate the guys even trying Symbaroum, and I appreciate doing the shared GMC. It's been so great. I in the future, whatever we do like this, when we try some other game we all are interested in playing more than once, more than a one-off, like we've done Delta Green, we've done Mothership, and they've all been great. We just haven't committed to a kind of a shared campaign idea or just a shared series of sessions. I would love to do this again in future, whether it's or even continue to do Symbaroum. But if we moved away from Symbaroum, I would hope the next thing we all agree to kind of share together, that we would do this again, right? Share that GM seat and be able to be players in a continuity, but then also be GMs and have that continuity as well. So anyway, it's one of the best experiences I've had as an adult in our hobby. And again, part of that's the people you play with, but I have played with so many great people and I've shared some great experiences. It's not that this is better than those experiences. This has been the first time I've had a chance to play a campaign and be a character and also rotate the responsibilities of the GM's chair. And I could see this being how I function for the remainder of my days in this hobby, because there was a period where I retired because I didn't want to be a GM anymore. I didn't want it was work for me. I just wanted to play. I hadn't played much in my life. I'd always been a GM as a kid. So there was a period where I said, I really don't want to GM anymore. I want to be a player. And, however, I do want to GM. I just don't want to GM all the time. And I don't want to GM every week. And I don't want that responsibility all the time. And I want to play. I want to be a player. I want to be a character. I want to be part of a group and explore the relationships in those parties, etc. And so I want the best of both worlds. I want my cake and eat it too. And I want to be with guys that feel similar. And so for the most part, I think with most veteran gamers, that's pretty much, I think, a standard for some groups. I think certainly with veteran gamers and veteran GMs, there's a lot to benefit from picking a game you all want to play and enjoy, but then also sharing those duties. It is really the best way to go about having a long-term group, I think, in my opinion. That way, one guy doesn't feel like he's always working as a GM, or one guy doesn't feel like, man, I would like to GM a little bit. I'm always a player in these games. I don't get to GM. So I think it's a very, it's something worth trying with your groups. It's something worth trying, among your home groups or your online groups, sharing those game systems and sharing those roles, right? A lot of guys change GMs, but they change systems. Like Tuesday, I'm GMing Star Wars. Next Tuesday, Joe, you're GMing D&D, and the next Tuesday, Bill, you're GMing. So they're sharing the GM seat, but they're not sharing the same campaign. They're not sharing the same system, and that has been phenomenal, because I've definitely been in groups where this week I GM something, next week Joe GM something, and so we're sharing different games and different GMs, but we're not sharing the same game system nor the same experience and the same world, right? There's this level of continuity that's kind of a fascinating and interesting thing. And what Dell chooses to do to the world when he pulls Rigel out, there's a fallback there that I can go, wow, I can play with that. I can take that and say, wow, that changes this relationship between Thistlehold and Blackmoor, and it directly affects the players, as Rigel was an arbiter of illegal activities, and they were beneficiaries of it. Now they've got to pay the consequences for Rigel not being there to pay the bribes or to protect them, and it leads to this creative juices of what can I set up for the guys in their next mission. So it's been great fun. And if anybody out there has the opportunity, I would try it with your group, with your local group or with your online group. Pick a system you all want to play, a system you'd all like to GM, and then pick 4 sessions. Everybody in the table. There's 4 of you. Everybody gets one session to GM the same group of characters in the same world, in the same. You don't have to have some grand thing in campaigns. You don't have to have the evil villain that they're working to bring down. You don't have to have Castlevania that they're working to find and destroy Ravenloft, right? You don't have to do that. Campaigns do not have to be this overarching umbrella of a thing that they're all ultimately working to do, right? Bring down the dragon, bring down the vampire, bring down the campaign can be the characters existing in a world with continuity and the things they must deal with, right? And then you can rotate that seat easily. So that's also, I think, comes from doing more sandbox and open world gaming, where the world is its thing, but there doesn't have to be something the players are acting against on a regular basis. The world is its thing, the world exists, and there's a sandbox kind of open world thing that's happening, but they could go right, they could go left. So if you've had that kind of play style, not even hex crawling, I'm just talking about kind of open world, the continuity is the world, the continuity is the players, the characters in the world, but there's not some overarching thing that they're trying to, ultimately end. So then there's not secrets that GMs have to share. And as player characters, we don't have to meta out. We don't know that. We don't know Rigel is this, that this could happen, right? So anyway, and it makes it great fun. So anyway, thank you for listening to this. I hope you guys enjoy this conversation. I don't know if I'm saying anything relevant, but the recap hopefully should at least bring everybody up to speed. Thank you. Good day.